I'm deeply moved to be part of this Aldo Leopold series. I mean, just to see who you have had here, real heroes of mine, and to be able to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the North American Review. It was literally the first place that I was ever published. And I remember, that's how I felt. I was so excited. You know, people say you always remember where you were when. I remember where I was when I received, I still have the letter. It was this small letter from Rob Lee Wilson, and it was the most courteous, generous letter. Dear Ms. Tempest Williams, you know, we accept, and that I didn't read anything else. And Bill, to hear you talk about your father and your mother and your dinner table of the manuscripts that were surrounded by the food that you ate. I'm so grateful for your sacrifice that has been our gain. And I really want to make a commitment to the editors tonight that with this beautiful new design, I think it's a new era for all of us to pay our respects to the magazine that gave us a voice. And I cannot wait to go back and tell my students, you know, to send in their manuscripts, to be a voice for this and an advocate for this venerable literary magazine, and to earn my name that is listed as one of the contributing editors, so thank you. I was reading some of the beautiful entries in this special issue on the open space of democracy, and you have to know how much this means to me, that this has been a phrase that you've taken as your own, with the gorgeous posters, the submissions, and it gives me such faith in where we are and where we will continue to be and move forward. But I was particularly struck by Heather Lang, The White Whale or the Existential Heart after Melville, quote unquote. A slender statue has become the night, flashing restless anger, deeper into what? We do not agree. Let me read that one more time. A slender statue has become the night, flashing restless anger, deeper into what? We do not agree. No, we don't. We are a divided nation, and in some ways I feel like the Civil War has never ended. And as writers, how do we write in a way that opens hearts instead of closes them? Jim, your leadership continues to show me how that is possible. You're one of the most elegant minds I've ever met, and also one of the most graceful human beings who acts out of compassionate intelligence, who knows how to listen, and I personally honor your conscious leadership. And Sasha, I want to tell you as a friend and as a sister how deeply your creative vision inspires my own, your beautiful tenacity toward life, and I will use this word again, graceful manifestation of courage becomes you. And I just love that you have taken this leadership onto the school board, and we honor you. To all of you who are here, students, visiting writers for this conference, faculty, community members, we can all share this celebratory moment together under this beautiful full moon in the prairies. And thank you, Taylor Burby, for your work on fracking and where we find ourselves now, and also Deborah Marquardt. You just gave me such a beautiful piece of knowledge that you're writing about oil. And these are the writers that I admire. They're on the front lines. You are not only in the classroom, but in community. And it's just a privilege to be able to stand with you by your side. And again, Jeremy, Rachel, Brooke, Brian, Sarah, and Grant, thank you for your editorial brilliance. Iowa, Utah, we bear many similarities. We are a conservative people tied to the land, with an immense sky that arches over us. We are wanted for our oil and gas, and we have suffered the physical consequences of pesticides and nuclear testing with high rates of cancers. I was immediately aware of that just with the advertisements for the hospitals and what's happening here in Iowa. It's the same in Utah. It's the same in New Mexico and so many of these places where oil and gas has moved in. We're both the sites of national campaigns, the Bakken Pipeline, DACA, that's cutting your state in half. And for us in Utah, it's the gutting of our national monuments for oil and gas development. Bears Ears National Monument, Grand Staircase, Escalante National Monument. There is a healthy opposition among us, and it cuts both ways. And it's here that I believe that the open space of democracy is most alive. We are a kind and community-driven people. I believe that. And it's not easy to disagree publicly or to have the hard conversations, but I believe we are having them. And the scale and rapidity with which our communities are being torn asunder, I think are bringing both sides together. I see it in my own family, even to the point that when Brooke and I, my husband, bought oil and gas leases in the state of Utah as a protest, being inspired by Tim DeChristopher, who served 2 years in prison, at a very hard moment among our family. My family lays pipe where natural gas runs through. My father, with our newly constructed LLC, Tempest Energy Company, said, "I will be your CEO because you don't know what the hell you're doing." My father didn't do that to be kind. He did it because he believed in it, because of the scale, because of these lands, our public lands, our public commons are being ravaged. A thing is right, Aldo Leopold wrote, when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. That is a manifesto to me, and I remember reading it as a young writer, and I thought, that's all I need. And it is on my desk, and I look at it every time I sit down to write. A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends to do otherwise. That is an ethical stance toward life. I gauge. At the heart of the open space of democracy is the land, public lands. And at the beating core of public lands is Aldo Leopold. Call him a deep part of the land ethic here in Iowa. What I can tell you is anything I have written, I honestly believe is derivative of Leopold's land ethic. In fact, I'm almost ashamed to say, but I think I plagiarized him. This paragraph, for example, quote, "The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include soils, waters, plants, and animals, collectively, the land. In short, a land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror to the land community, to plain member and citizen of it. It implies respect for his fellow members and also respect for the community at large." I have written these exact words, and I only hope that if his ghost is here, his spirit, that he understands that it is only because nobody can say it better than he has, and the rest of us are following. The words that I read on the banks of the Green River in Dinosaur National Monument in Utah were Aldo Leopold's. I had just graduated from high school in Salt Lake City. I was with my mother and grandmother and brothers and cousins. And as they were playing in the water and as the women in my family were talking about family issues, I was sitting underneath the cottonwood tree reading the land ethic. It created a revolution in me. Leopold loved wild places and wild geese. So did I. Leopold was asking me to, quote, "think like a mountain." That didn't seem strange to me. The Wasatch Mountains were my backbone and bedrock at once. And when he spoke of seeing the green fire go out of the dying wolf's eyes, I knew that green fire was alive in my own heart. What I didn't know then, that I do know now, is after witnessing decades of environmental degradation, is how important it is to fight for these lands. My father recently said, "She used to be such a nice person." And that was after he also said at the same dinner, family dinner, "At least she has a hobby." writing. And in fighting for land health and Leopold's words and protecting that land, we're also joining arms with our brown and black and native brothers and sisters in issues of environmental and social justice. I am so grateful for that. And much of what I want to share tonight is how Utah has been completely transformed by the leadership of the tribes. The Navajo, Diné, Hopi, Zuni, Ute, and Ute Mountain Ute. They have shown us not only what dignity is, but how to listen, what integrity feels like. And how when I asked Willie Gray Eyes, who's one of the community organizers and a spiritual leader among his people, where he resides at the base of Navajo Mountain, he said to me in a very low moment, and with a name like Tempest, it's hard not to get angry easily. When we knew what was going to happen with Donald Trump coming in to gut Bears Ears, I went to him and I said, "Look, Willie, what do we do with our anger?" And he looked at me and he said, "This is not a time for anger, Terry, anymore. This has to be a time of healing." I'm still thinking about what that means. One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. Aldo Leopold. Don't you love that? One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. I want to just briefly give a rendering of what's happened in Utah, because I think one place illustrates every place. How many have heard of Bears Ears? It makes me so happy because a couple of years ago that would not have been the case. Bears Ears has changed me, instructed me, continues to mentor all of us who live in this state of Utah as to the art of dwelling, what that really means. Mark Maryboy, who I've known for decades, Utah's a small town, maybe it's the same in Iowa. He's been one of the most courageous Native leaders, former county commissioner, very, very brave. He told, when someone asked him, how long has Bears Ears been going on? He looked at them and said, how long has the earth been formed? And then he talked about when he was a child, he was sitting on the banks of the San Juan River by the bridge. And if you can imagine, it was 1968 in the spring, and Robert Kennedy was running for President of the United States. He paid the Navajo elders a visit. And on the edge of the San Juan River, he asked them, how might I serve you? Can you imagine? And Mark listened as his grandparents, who were elders, said in unison, protect Bears Ears. That was 1968. In 2011, it started being discussed. I think it was ignited by the oil and gas development. The elders came forward, met with conservationists in the state, and a conversation began. 2016, President Barack Obama listened. And on December 28, 2016, toward the end of his presidency, he established the Bears Ears National Monument. It was a healing moment between the tribes in the American Southwest, the Four Corners area, and the United States government. It was a recognition, a handshake across history, that traditional knowledge, what the tribes know, what Native people live with, can exist simultaneously with scientific knowledge, with the federal agencies. Dreams started becoming public policy. And then less than a year later, on December 4th, 2017, Donald Trump came to Utah for under 2 hours, and at the behest of Senator Orrin Hatch, beholden to the fossil fuel industry, gutted Bears Ears by 85%, and cut Grand Staircase National Monument by half, saying, as a real estate person, 1.2 million acres sounds good to me, and it was open for business. What do we do in the face of such blatant and bold disregard as we watch the open space of democracy close? We turn to our communities. We assess our gifts, and we offer them up in the name of community. And I can tell you, I didn't know what to do. I was so angry. And that's when I went to Willie, and that's when he said we have to heal. What I think he meant, and which we've had further conversations, is if we are going to begin to heal as a nation, we have to find the source of our pain. If you have a splinter or a piece of glass in your heel, before you can really heal, you have to find that splinter. You have to take out that piece of glass. Otherwise, it festers. Where is the source of our pain? Where is the source of our disconnect? And as writers, how do we begin? For me, I began in locating someone that I wanted to work with. And when I was teaching, I met a photographer named Fazl Sheikh. And he is from this country, he's American, but he's been photographing all over the world. Israel, Palestine, places of dispute, of contention and war, including Rwanda, Pakistan, all over the world. We met for a cup of coffee, and very indelicately I said, without knowing him, why don't you come home? And he said, how dare you? You don't know who I am. And I said, I know your work. And if you're going to all of these places in conflict, why don't you come home? Why don't you come to Utah? You are needed. It did not end well. And we said goodbye. And I thought, why didn't I just keep my mouth closed? That was in May 2017. The end of July, I got a telephone call. I said, hello, and he goes, damn you. And I thought, whoops, robocall. And he said, I said, excuse me? And he goes, this is Fazl Sheikh. Can I come? And he did. And we went and we talked to the elders. And when he met the spiritual leaders, he said to the community, how can I help? What beautiful words. How can I help? What can we do together? And for a year, Fazl listened. And we went down repeatedly and listened. And then when we heard what was going to happen with the monument being dismantled, there was a rally at the Utah State Capitol. And what we decided is we could do the only thing that we knew how to do as a writer and a photographer. We followed the lines of Camus when he said sometimes words can be more than ammunitions. Or when he had these pamphlets that he would distribute in Paris during conflict. And so what we did in a matter of 2 weeks, we found some funding, and Fazl with his photographs, he'd been taking pictures for the year. We made just a brochure, and I share this with you because I think, how do we act? If I didn't act, I would be in bed so depressed. I cannot tell you. And I think it's in those moments when you can't get up in the morning, you're aware of what a single imagination can't do. But imaginations shared create collaboration, and in collaboration we create community, and in community anything is possible. So this was the brochure, Exposure. We printed 10,000. We had a local printer. We distributed them through different grassroots organizations into the crowd. And then we gave most of the brochures tracts to the tribal members themselves on the res. So Exposure, it talked about the issue, establishment of Bears Ears National Monument. We quoted from the beautiful proclamation from Barack Obama. This was an open letter to President Donald J. Trump by Willie Grayeyes, who was leader of the Utah Diné Bikea. These were examples of what's happening on the outskirts of Bears Ears: coal, uranium tailings, fracking, off-road vehicles. I wrote a piece called Boom. And then the most important thing is we exposed through Fuzzle's photograph. Does anyone know what this is? It's a capped uranium mine that is leaching into the San Juan River and the Colorado River. I've never seen this. It's hidden. Fuzzle saw it. And instinctively I knew he would be brave enough to expose what none of us dared to see. Millions of people have suffered from uranium tailings leaching into the water system. Tens of thousands of Navajo miners and Mormon people are dead from this particular mine. I want to share with you, and I have not done this, but I feel safe because Jim is the provost. But I want to read this. I've read excerpts, but I haven't read the whole thing. It's an angry piece, but I think there are times when anger is appropriate. And I think because of this piece, I am able to heal, because I've acknowledged something that I haven't before. And what I can tell you is that this piece was actually a very long text. When Fuzzle came back after flying all over Utah, and he called me and he said, "Terry, I have been all over the world. This is the most violent place I have ever seen." I knew the pieces. I never dared connect the dots. What is beauty, if not stillness? What is stillness, if not sight? What is sight, if not an awakening? What is an awakening, if not now? The American landscape is under assault by an administration that cares only about themselves. Working behind closed doors, they are strategically undermining environmental protections that have been in place for decades, and they're getting away with it. In practices of secrecy, in deeds of greed, in acts of violence that are causing pain. Like many, I have compartmentalized my state of mind in order to survive. Like most, I have also compartmentalized my state of Utah. It is a violence hidden that we all share. This is the fallout that has entered our bodies. Nuclear bombs tested in the desert. Boom. These are uranium tailings left on the edges of our towns where children play. Boom. The war games played and nerve gas stored in the West Desert. Boom. These are the oil and gas lines, frac lines, from Vernal to Bonanza in the Uinta Basin. Boom. This is Aneth and Montezuma Creek, the oil patches on Indian lands. Boom. Gut Bears Ears. Boom. Cut Grand Staircase Escalante in half. Boom. And every other wild place that is easier for me to defend than my own people and species. Boom. The coal and copper mines I watched expand as a child. Huntington and Kennecott. Boom. The oil refineries that foul the air and blacken our lungs in Salt Lake City. Boom. And the latest scar on the landscape, the tar sands mine in the Book Cliffs, closed, now hidden simply by its remoteness. Boom. Add the Cisco Desert where trains stop to settle the radioactive waste they are carrying on to Blanding. Boom. Move the uranium tailings from Moab to Crescent Junction, then bury them still hot in the alkaline desert, out of sight, out of mind. Boom. See the traces of human indignities on the sands near Topaz Mountain, left by the Japanese internment camps. Boom. President Donald J. Trump will try to eviscerate Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante monuments with his pen and poisonous policies. He will stand tall with other white men who for generations have exhumed, looted, and profited from the graves of ancient ones. They will tell you Bears Ears belongs to them. Boom. Consider Senator Orrin Hatch's words regarding the Bears Ears Intertribal Coalition support of the Bears Ears National Monument. Quote, "The Indians, Well, they don't fully understand that a lot of the things that they are currently taking for granted on those lands, they won't be able to do if it's made clearly into a monument or a wilderness, unquote. And when he was asked to give examples by a reporter, the senator said, quote, "Just take my word for it," unquote. This is a story, a patronizing story, a condescending story. I see politicians and Mormons discounting the tribes once again, calling them Lamanites, the rebellious ones against God, dark-skinned and cursed. That is their story. Racism is a story. The Book of Mormon is a story. Boom. Perhaps our greatest trauma living in the state of Utah is the religiosity of the Mormon patriarchy that says, you have no authority to speak. Women, Indians, black people, brown people, gay people, trans. It is only the chosen ones who hold the priesthood over us and counsel us that the only way to heaven is through them. All my life, I was told I could not speak, that I had no voice, no power, except through my father, or my husband, or my bishop, or the general authorities. And then there was the prophet. Boom. I refused to perpetuate this lie, this myth, this abuse called silence. If birds had a voice, so did I. I would tell a different story, one of beauty and abundance, not what it means to endure. Environmental racism is the outcome of bad stories, a byproduct of poverty. In Utah, yellow cake has dusted the lips of Navajo uranium workers for decades who are now sick or dead. Boom. There is no running water in Westwater, a reservation town adjacent to Blanding. Boom. Local municipalities refuse to provide Navajo families with this one basic right, water. Boom. But we are not prejudiced. Boom. If you speak of these oversights, call them cruelties, we as Mormons are seen as having betrayed our roots and our people. These are my people. Boom. This is who I am. Boom. A white woman of privilege, born of the covenant. I am not on the outside, but the inside. Boom. It is time to look in the mirror and reflect on the histories that are ours. We are being told a treacherous story that says it is an individual's right, our hallowed state's right, to destroy what is common to us all. The land beneath our feet, the water we drink, the air we breathe. Our bodies and the body of the state of Utah are being violated. Our eyes are closed, our mouths are sealed. We refuse to see or say what we know to be true. Utah is a beautiful violence. Our silence is our death sentence. The climate is changing. We have a right and responsibility to protect each other. Resistance and insistence before the law. We are slowly dying. We are ignoring the evidence. Awareness is our prayer. Beauty will prevail. Native people are showing us the way. It is time to heal these lands and each other by calling them what they are, sacred. May wing beats of ravens cross over us in ceremony. May we recognize our need of a collective blessing by earth. May we ask forgiveness for our wounding of land and spirit. And may our right relationship to life be restored as we work together toward a survival shared. A story is awakening, many stories. We are part of something much larger than ourselves, an interconnected whole that stretches upward to the stars. Coyote in the desert is howling in the darkness, calling forth the pack, lifting up the moon. Afterwards, I went and spoke with Jonah Yellowman, who's the spiritual advisor of Bears Ears, after the gutting, after the cutting of these sacred lands. And I said, Jonah, what are you feeling? What are you seeing? He said, what my elders are telling me, and he's 72, is that we have to go deeper. That is my question to us tonight. How do we go deeper? Each in our own way, each in our own time, with the gifts that are ours, in the places we call home. Where is our love? Where is our outrage? Where is our grief? Where is our community? To the students here at this extraordinary university, I would ask you to find your community. And if you haven't found one yet, build one. And as you build it, nurture it, support it. That is how we survive. That is how we thrive. Come home to where you are in this beautiful, broken place we call home. It can no longer be about anger. It has to be about healing. We must go deeper. We do not agree. Tell me a story. I want to close with a story prefaced by a passage from the Open Space of Democracy. And I just want to thank you so much for letting me share these things closest to my heart. And I feel free to do that because I know the people that I love and revere in the state of Iowa know about homecoming, understand loss, the prairie, and I know you're fighting for your lives. The human heart is the first home of democracy. It is where we embrace our questions. Can we be equitable? Can we be generous? Can we listen with our whole beings, not just our minds, and offer our attention rather than our opinions? And do we have enough resolve in our hearts to act courageously, relentlessly, without giving up ever, trusting our fellow citizens to join with us in our determined pursuit of a living democracy? The heart is the house of empathy, whose door opens when we receive the pain of others. This is where bravery lives, where we find our mettle to give and receive, to love and be loved, to stand in the center of uncertainty with strength, not fear, understanding this is all there is. The heart is the path to wisdom because it dares to be vulnerable in the presence of power. Our power lies in our love of our homelands. I want to close with a story that is about my friend Doug Peacock, who many of you will recognize as the inspiration for the character George Washington Hayduke in Edward Abbey's novel, The Monkey Wrench Gang. He's also an amazing advocate for grizzly bears. I think he and Aldo Leopold would have gotten along. This will take about 7 minutes, and I just appreciate your generosity. It is time to weep and sing, wrote W.H. Auden. At a low ebb of hope, I asked my friend Doug Peacock how he staves off despair. This is the man who kept a map of Yellowstone in the back pocket of his fatigues throughout the war and would unfold it at night to keep insanity at bay. Insulate yourself with friends and seek out wild places, he said, which is exactly what I was doing, seeking out my friend on the other side of Yellowstone on the day we learned that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had denied wolverines protection under the Endangered Species Act. While driving from Jackson Hole, Wyoming to Livingston, Montana, I was listening to Vivaldi's Four Seasons, recomposed by the musician Max Richter. I love this piece of music, and I love the story behind it. Richter's favorite piece of music was Vivaldi's Four Seasons. He had played it as a musician hundreds of times and had heard it many more times than he'd ever performed it. But the strangest things started to occur. The Four Seasons had become so commercialized, so trivialized, played in elevators and as the soundtrack for cheap commercials, that he could no longer hear it. Its beauty had become lost to him. demoted to musical wallpaper. Max Richter did the unthinkable. He reimagined Vivaldi's masterpiece and recomposed it so it could be heard once again at this moment in time. Richter added the bass notes. Quote, "The four seasons is something we all carry around with us," Richter said. "It's everywhere. In a way, we stopped being able to hear it. So this project was about reclaiming the music for me personally. I wanted to fall in love with it all over again," he said. "By getting inside the music and rediscovering it for myself, I was able to take a new path through this well-known landscape," unquote. So I was listening to the Four Seasons recomposed as I was en route to Doug. My mind was moving toward the reverie with the music. It was exactly what I needed to recompose myself as I was driving through Yellowstone to Montana, inspiring me to reimagine everything. Our institutions and agencies, churches, universities, hospitals, healthcare, families as institutions are no longer working for us. It is time to reimagine them as movements of direct action, fierce and compassionate at once. Time to reimagine our public lands as sanctuaries, refuges, and sacred lands. Time to rethink what is acceptable and what is not. I became lost in the music, and then as I was driving through the Hayden Valley, the cars in front of me came to an abrupt halt. Bison jam. Hundreds of bison not only crossing the road, but walking alongside us. I was now barely at a crawl, going 5 miles per hour. I rolled down my window, still listening to the Four Seasons with the volume much louder than I realized. The bison started moving closer to the car. I started getting nervous, thought about rolling out my window, but then I began noticing the bison turning their heads toward the music, walking even closer to the car. I imagined they were enjoying Vivaldi as I was, and I relaxed as we listened to the music together for over a mile, all of us, slowly moving down the road. I was late to Doug's house. He was waiting. Luckily, I brought him a nice French Bordeaux. We took the bottle and 2 glasses outside with a view of Paradise Valley. Doug had written a plea on the Wolverines' behalf a week before. It had been published online in the Daily Beast. He'd received a note from his editor, Chris Dickey, the son of the poet James Dickey. "I'm sorry," Chris said. "Perhaps this poem from my father will help." Under a thunderous sky with bolts of lightning adding punctuation, Doug and I read For the Last Wolverine, out loud to each other, between sips of wine, alternating between stanzas, with tears streaming down our cheeks. The final lines undid us. Alone, with maybe some dim racial notion of being the last, but none of how much your unnoticed going will mean, how much the timid poem needs the mindless explosion of your rage, the glutton's internal fire, the elk's heart in the belly sprouting wings, the pact of the blind swallowing thing with himself, to eat the world and not be driven off it until it is gone, even if it takes forever. I take you as you are and make of you what I will, skunk bear, carcajoy, bloodthirsty non-survivor. Lord, let me die, but not die out. Doug and I raised our glasses to the mountains, black clouds billowing all around us as a swath of red clouds turned pink. "To Wolverine," Doug said, and then he turned to me with tears in his eyes. "We lose nothing by loving." Question, stand, speak, act. Thank you.